Hello everyone, my name is Claudia Girardone. I'm Professor of Banking and Finance and Director of the Essex Finance Centre at Essex Business School of the University of Essex in the United Kingdom. It is a pleasure for me today to be able to ask a few questions to Dimitris Tomakos, who is Professor of Applied Econometrics at National and Kapodistrian University of Athens in Greece. Professor Tomakos is one of the 4 co-authors of a very interesting paper that has recently been accepted in the British Journal of Management. The co-authors are Geoffrey Wood, Marie-Louise Yokimidis, and Georgios Papagiannakis. The paper is entitled ShoTS Short-Time Series Forecasting for Management Research. Professor Tomakos, can I ask you first a general question about your research? So what is the main novelty of your paper?
First of all, thank you, Claudia, for doing this interview for us. It's a great pleasure to do it. Now, we propose a novel method for forecasting short data series. In other words, where the researcher only has a limited number of data points but would like to do forecasting work. Our new method, which we call ShoTS for short time series, is a simple extrapolation method that relates to the most fundamental benchmark in forecasting, the naive or no change forecast. The method has a very intuitive foundation and such theoretical properties that allow it to perform very well with limited information. That this is indeed the case also comes from the fact that as more information accumulates, then under some conditions, the ShoTS forecast collapses at or is close to the naive benchmark. At its core, ShoTS is a linear combination of the level and the change of a time series suitably adapted for optimal forecasting performance. The use of the levels and changes of a time series is very intuitive because at the decision-making stage, we most frequently discuss the value of a variable in its measurement units, that is the levels, and its direction change as increasing or decreasing.
Oh, so your method is ideal for a researcher who has limited data, so short time series, but wants to do forecasting. So can I ask you, what is the advantage, the benefit of using this method in an era of big data?
Well, the thing is that data are like trees. They grow big in time, but when their collection starts, they are small and our information is limited. And there are 2 major reasons for thinking about and working with short time series. First, there are genuine cases where only limited information has been collected. For example, there is an external event that occurs and prompts collection for new information. And a very recent example is the COVID-19 crisis. Or another example is that you are in a company and you create a new KPI, a performance indicator, and you need to start collecting information about that or something similar. Or in any case that we would like to know more about things as they go on in a new era. The second reason is that there are potential changes in the data generating process of a time series, which is always unknown to the researcher, and that change may not require the whole history of the time series for accurate inference, but only a limited recent sample of observations. And we can see that in both cases, being able to work with limited data at the beginning of a new time series is very crucial for decision making.
So how difficult is it to implement the method?
Not at all. The method depends in just one theoretical parameter that relates the level and the change of the time series that is being forecasted. The parameter depends on some of the underlying characteristics of the time series, and it is very easily estimated by certain sample means from the observations. And so it can be implemented even in a spreadsheet.
Oh, that's very good news for the researchers then. So what kind of results have you obtained in your analysis, and what is the practical interpretation?
Now, when dealing with short time series, we face the problem that it is very difficult to assess forecasting performance. So you have limited information to estimate, but also you have limited information to evaluate the forecasting performance. And we have thus resorted in the paper in aggregation and averaging of forecasting performance among many short time series. And this provided us with results that are robust and very interpretable. We have used 2 samples, one with over 1,500 companies of 12 observations each, and another one of 89 country and region groups of 8 observations each. Now, the ShoTS and the benchmark forecasts were computed and their performance evaluated, and we then aggregated the performance measure. The interpretation of our results is thus on average. And what we find is that the ShoTS forecasts systematically outperform the literature benchmarks, producing better performance measures, and that performance is statistically significant, unlike most cases of the benchmark forecasts. Across many short time series, we would expect that with high probability, ShoTS would be the preferred method to go.
Great. So, Professor Thomas, I have one last question for you. So, I'd like to know how your work can be applied and potentially expanded in the future.
Okay, we do have issues for future research, and the main issue is to try to understand what is a short time series. Like, is it 5 or 8 or 12 or 21 observations or anything in between, right? And this is important because our claim is that as more observations accumulate, then one could switch from ShoTS to another method. But we do not know when this switch is going to occur, and this is something that we would like to explore more. A second issue for future research is also to consider comparisons of using a smaller, that is the most recent observations, versus a larger sample that includes recent and older observations when the more observations are available, and if choosing the smaller sample with ShoTS is preferable to using the larger sample with a different method. And this second issue touches the comparison issue that is touches, among other interesting theoretical discussions in the forecasting literature. And we do look forward in exploring both issues in the future.